Good afternoon to everybody and warm welcome to the 147th edition of the Global Weather Report, live here from our Vogan Weather HQ in Edmonton, Rossshire. How is everybody doing on this Sunday afternoon? If you're in the southeast, you're probably feeling the heat down there, and it is going to obviously get worse as we progress through the next couple of days. But a good afternoon to Joe McKendry, tuning in from Allness, and his good lady as well. So thank you very much to you good folks for tuning in this afternoon. We've got Lindsay next door, also tuning in, not next door, but she's in the next room. And I'm not going to mention myself, but who else have we got on the live chat this afternoon? I'm still waiting for another comment to come through, but it's actually got a bit cloudy up here across Scotland this afternoon. Sorry. Joe, I was going to say Joe McKeldry. That's a very good start. I apologise, William. How are you doing, my friend? I will get your name right at some point. That is a very good start to the live this afternoon, isn't it? Good afternoon to Paul James as well, down in sunny Hampshire. I'm sure Paul is enjoying the warm sunshine, my friend. Maybe you are, maybe you aren't. I'm not 100% sure. We've also got GH tuning in this afternoon as well. Let me know where you're tuning in from and what your weather conditions are like this afternoon. We are obviously underneath a building area of high pressure. We did see an unofficial wind gust at a nearby station to this location in Invergordon of 66 miles per hour. Yesterday, very strong winds blowing out of the west around the northern periphery of this high pressure system that is bringing record-breaking heat. We already have confirmation that we have seen one national June record already been broken. That has been down on El Granado, I think it is, down in southwestern Spain. Temperature of 46.0 Celsius breaks a record that was set back in the 1960s. So a very impressive heat. We are going to be continuing to see that heat building northwards into the UK as we progress through the course of tomorrow and even into Tuesday as well. Now, I say it's building into the UK because we haven't got the core of the hottest air in place just yet. It continues to build, and probably what's taking place down across Iberia is really a sign of things to come further north, up into France, up into the Low Countries, into the southeast UK. The northwest of both Ireland, Northern Ireland and Scotland is going to miss out generally on the heat. So no heat wave up here across Scotland or indeed across in Ireland either. Obviously, the general threshold is 25 Celsius over 3 days, consecutive days anyway. Then it goes to 26 in parts of the Midlands, then 28, and then 27, 28 Celsius down around the Greater London area is the threshold that has to be achieved. So 28 Celsius, 3 consecutive days in a row has to be achieved that's the definition of a heat wave within the UK. JL says 35 here in central northern Portugal. So, very hot conditions down across pretty much all of Iberia, but particularly so across that south-central region of Spain, as well as parts of Portugal as well. That kind of east-central parts of Portugal is really seeing some incredible warmth at this moment in time. In fact, let's have a quick look. But before we get into the nuts and bolts of the discussion for today, I wanted to point out the very first Global Weather Report, Edition 1, was actually recorded. Now, this was before the live streams took place. This was recorded essentially just over a week past. It was 3 years that the Global Weather Report has been going. So 3 years this global discussion has been ongoing here on the channel. So delighted to say it's reached its third year. We're obviously now sitting on edition 147, which is hard to believe. Obviously, the live streams are now an ongoing thing each and every Sunday. That's been the case now for well over a year now. So, things are ticking along quite nicely. It's a busy channel, content 7 days a week. So there's the ploy. You know what I'm going to say next. Hit that like button absolutely free to do so, and also subscribe to the channel. I'm getting ever closer to 7,000 subscribers here. So if you haven't already done so, and you're a lover of all things weather, fair, balanced approach to weather as well as climate, well, hopefully this is the place for you. Good afternoon to David Vogan down in Kirkintilloch. He is saying that friends of mine were in Lewis. Wait a minute. Let me just get his first comment first. Sorry, Dad. So it's been a lovely day here in Kirkintilloch. 21 degrees, but cloudy and breezy now, says David. So did I say Paul Farwell? Hello, Paul Farwell. I think I did. If I did, sorry about that. If I didn't, well, good afternoon to Paul. I'm just trying to get my grounds here. Very humid in Swindon, but not as hot as other parts of the south, says Paul. GH is saying warm and stuffy. Out for a walk in Annalong here after a feed of fish and chips. Yummy. What is everybody having for their Sunday evening dinner? We are having gammon this evening. So there you go. A good old gammon is what we are having, Lindsay and I, for tonight's dinner. We've got Katrine tuning in as well. Good afternoon to Katrine. We've got Turbo Stream tuning in also. So let me just see here who else is tuning in this afternoon. Hope everybody is well, staying safe. If you're out in the sunshine, make sure and wear that sunscreen. It could be 20 degrees or it could be 30 degrees. That sun is equally as strong. It's not so much the temperature, but it is the strength of the sun that has to be taken into account. So please, please, please be careful out there. The sun is pretty much at its strongest point so far, and this is the strongest time of the year. Obviously, we're just past the summer solstice, of course. Spaghetti carbonara says Dad for dinner this evening. I think I seen somebody saying ribeye steaks, which sounds pretty good to me. Turbo Stream saying absolutely bone dry here too. When will it rain again? Barely any rain for months, and that certainly is probably helping boost the temperature. In fact, it is helping boost the temperature. Lack of moisture means to say there's a lot more energy going directly into heating up the air rather than evaporating any moisture that's getting released from the ground. So that is something to pay attention to here. Looking at climatereanalyzer.org, not looked at this in a little while here. Look at this jet stream across the northern hemisphere. We've got this wavy, amplified wave break type of setup at the moment. Actually, the strongest jet anywhere in the northern hemispheres crossing over the top of the UK and into Scandinavia at this moment in time. And it's underneath this jet stream that we're seeing all the air building, the pressure building. We're seeing a record strong upper level ridge of high pressure for late June standards. So JL is having 2 ribeye steaks. So you enjoy them, JL, this evening. Jamie's World also tuning in from Glasgow. Good afternoon to Jamie. Let me just see if there's anybody else. So you can see here that jet stream is, we've got quite a contrast between Greenland, Iceland, and mainland Europe here. Boiling hot weather across the heart of Europe, but we've got actually some fairly chillier across Iceland and Greenland. Therefore, that temperature differential creates a very powerful jet stream. And it's a good bit stronger than what you would expect to see at this time of the year. Yes, it does tick up after a very quiet period naturally during the springtime. It then kind of comes back to life as you increase the temperature gradient over the northern hemisphere, and we're seeing a kind of stronger than normal jet for this time of the year. I had baked tatty with a tuna topping, says Turbo Stream. Good afternoon to Richard Smith as well, tuning in. Let me just see here what else has happened. Plenty of things going on. Tropics. Indian monsoon has now progressed into the far north of the country, so that means the monsoon has now progressed through all of India. That is about 8 days ahead of schedule. We've obviously got a Mongoolian oscillation that's been favouring a stronger Somali jet. We've had much more increased convection over much of the Indian subcontinent. Therefore, we've seen plentiful rains early on, and hopefully that will continue for the billions of people that live down in India. Massive, very, very important to their economy down there. and even global implications as well, I must say. So let me just see here what else people are saying. When will we see 10 or 12 degrees? Basically, autumnal weather, says Jamie. Well, certainly we've got a wee while to go, my friend, yet. I know there's a lot of people that love the heat. I do like the heat. And unfortunately, up here, we're barely scraping 20 Celsius. I think the central belt into the low 20s. Let's have a quick look then. I'm kind of chopping and changing as you usually do. I'm sure some folk get a wee bit annoyed with that. I do apologise if you do. So yeah, it's a kind of off the cuff, not necessarily overly organised discussion in terms of both UK, Ireland, European, but global weather. We're looking at the global picture each and every Sunday afternoon. So we've got a pretty warm one out there. So we had 30 yesterday. I think it was 31 point something recorded yesterday. We've got a 30 again down and around the Greater London area. We're going to tick things up probably a good 3, 4, 5 degrees on top of what we're seeing today, tomorrow, possibly Tuesday. I think Tuesday is now going to be the peak of the heat. There's a question mark over a frontal system introducing fresher Atlantic air from the west. It's the timing of that versus the maximum heat in mid to late afternoon that's going to be critical in terms of what type of temperature we see down in the southeast of the UK. So yeah, temperatures today widely mid-20s across the board. We've even got a 26 all the way up into North Yorkshire. Yeah, Teesside. I think is that Yorkshire, or is that further up than Yorkshire? I'm not entirely sure. I'm sure somebody can help me out with that. We've actually got 23 in Edinburgh Gogar Bank, 22.6 to be exact. We've got a 22.9 at Lookers. But then you get further north, yeah, we've still got 22 and 20 up around Kinloss, Lossiemouth, even at 10, we've got a 19.3, but we do have cloudy skies. Lindsay's put the washing out. I thought as soon as you put the washing out, the chances are it's going to rain. We've got a 15 Celsius at Loch Liscarnock. So fresher air is definitely present over the Northwest Highlands. So a big contrast compared to yesterday. These, by the way, were the maximums yesterday across the UK. Only 17.3 at Loch Liscarnock, but we did have fairly widespread 30 Celsius, even 29.2 at Donna Nook, which I believe is in Lincolnshire. Get yourself further west. Big contrast over Wales, 16.6 at Capel Curig versus 26.2 at, well, this is the West Midlands at Shawbury. I know my dad knows that location very well. Very good chip shop there, I believe. And then we've got 26.9 at Hereford. So 16.6 Capel Curig versus 26.9 at Hereford. As you can see here, let's have a look at the temperatures that we achieved yesterday down in Iberia. So El Granado recorded 46.0 Celsius. That is being confirmed by AEMET as the new June record for Spain. And this is the widespread 40s that we achieved yesterday across south-central Spain. This south-central region is known as the Oven of Spain, or Oven of Spain. Depends on what your pronunciation is. And you can see here, these are the current temperatures right now of Meteoseal, and we do have a 44 at Merida, elevation 228 meters above sea level. Would not be surprised if somewhere in this region is knocking the door of 45, 46 Celsius, like we've seen yesterday. Let's have a look at France then, and you can see we've got the temperatures close to the 40 Celsius mark across parts of France already. So these are the temperatures over France at the minute. And you can see here, widespread low to mid 30s. Now, the core of this heat is going to be more over the north of France, up into the Low Countries tomorrow. There is going to be a threat at the final day of June. There is going to be a threat, I think, to the Belgian record, possibly the Netherlands record, and a small chance of even a threat at the UK June record, which is obviously 35.6, set back in 1976. So it really just depends on several factors whether we get there tomorrow or not. but I do think Tuesday is possibly going to be the warmest day of the lot, and obviously that is into the month of July, and obviously we know that the July record is 40 Celsius achieved back in 2022. We are not going to get quite that high, or at least I hope not anyway. So yeah, current temperatures across the whole of Europe at this moment in time looks like this. So relatively cool up across central portions of Norway, even into central Sweden. We've got kind of mid-teens at the moment here. But then as you progress further south, we've been seeing temperatures 40 Celsius anywhere from Spain all the way to Bosnia, into North Macedonia. This kind of Balkan region of Europe is really seeing an uptick in temperatures in the last wee while. Good afternoon to Sink Splint. How you doing, my friend? Hope you're well and enjoying your day and your weekend. Hi, Mark. Do you think July and August hot? Says Ross Miller. Well, certainly, I think we're going to see more. We're going to have a look at the July outlook coming up, so stay tuned for that, Ross. Obviously, August is still a little bit off. However, the summer forecast does highlight that we could see heat surges through the month of July as well as the month of August as well. I think we're going to get back and forth this year. We've seen that in June, it has to be said. Always fresher, always cooler, near an area of low pressure that's been kind of permanent over Iceland. That's been sending frontal systems into that hot air mass, creating the storms, kind of deflating that high that's been so prevalent across the Mediterranean. We've obviously got record warm sea surface temperatures for this time of the year, near 30 Celsius in the coasts either side of Italy, by the way. So very, very warm Mediterranean. That's going to do a work in terms of enhancing the heat, I think, as we progress into the heart of summer. It's also we need to really watch that Mediterranean as we head towards the autumn season. Could see some mega rain events because of the amount of fuel within the Mediterranean basin. So that's something to keep an eye on, I think, later down the road here. Manchulian oscillation forecast for the month of July actually shows a lot of subsidence over the Atlantic, rising motion over the Pacific, and with a lack of tropical activity as we move into the month of July, I don't think there's going to be as much forcing out of the tropics, with regards to the Atlantic basin and changing the overall dynamics of the pattern. I think, I'm kind of slightly digressing here. Let's have a look at the July outlook then. I suppose we'll look at that just a second here, but I want to get to this here. I've talked about the jet stream. This is the 2-meter temperature anomaly chart for today from a global perspective, and this is a better kind of panned out view. Obviously, pretty much the hottest part of the world compared to average is over Europe at the moment here. We do have hotspots around the planet, as you can see here, but generally speaking, the focus is over the near continent. That is the hottest zone within the planet in terms of anomaly. You're talking 8 to 12 Celsius above average, as can be seen here. Nothing as it seems is tuning in. Good afternoon to you. 76-77 Pacific climate shift was closely associated with the PDO, the long-term pattern of climate variability. Yes, that is a good point you make with regards to that. Matt Day also tuning in. Good afternoon to yourself. Let me just see if there's anybody else that I've missed. I don't think I have. We've got 24 concurrent viewers at the moment. Be sure that, in fact, 35 is just updated. 35 on the live stream at the moment here. Be sure to hit that like button. It would be greatly appreciated. It really does help me out a lot. So this is the current temperature anomalies around the planet at the moment here for today. We've got areas of cool across the northern tier of the United States, also the southern tier. We've got heat up into the northeastern plain states, the Great Lakes, the eastern side of the United States. We've got very warm across Ontario. We've also got cool pockets down into Florida, and parts of the Gulf Coast states is below average at the moment. Parts of Canada, there's probably more warm versus cool across Canada. And we've also seen some remarkable heat across parts of Morocco over the last day or so. Very cool air across the bulk of Kazakhstan, central and western Kazakhstan, into Russia, into the far east of Europe. We're seeing slightly below average. And then, of course, Norway, Sweden, and Finland, we're seeing below average conditions here at the moment as well. Central portions of Australia is generally cool and average with a warm east and west. In terms of up into India, where you've got the heavy rainfall, central and northern India, we're seeing below average temperatures as a consequence. Warmer than average across the Middle East. We're seeing a couple of spots at 50 Celsius, but then we are now entering the hottest time of the year. Upper 40s is fairly typical over the Arabian Desert, for example, into Iraq, Syria, Iran. We've got slightly below average as you go up towards Afghanistan, Turkmenistan, and then Kazakhstan, as can be seen here. If we look at the weatherbell.com and see what the month of June is looking like, we've obviously got 1 day left of the month, but these are the areas of below average versus above average. Let me just quickly get to the right chart. We'll look at that here. Let's look at the equatorial view. So this is the current temperature anomalies for the month so far, 29th of June. So you've got quite a cool pocket across eastern areas of Russia, Europe, and Western Russia is actually below average. The Middle East is an interesting one. Let's have a zoom in on the Middle East, because temperature anomalies are actually slightly below average across broad areas. For example, the stands of West Central Asia into Iran, into much of Saudi Arabia, and then move across into Sudan and Egypt, even into Libya. According to CDAS 0.5, we're actually talking about below average temperatures in Northeast Africa. And then we've got warmer than average granted across Syria into Lebanon and Iraq. But northeastern Turkey, Georgia, Azerbaijan is below average here as well. So either side of the Caspian is actually below average for the month of June. And then much of Iran below average. And then moving into Pakistan and Afghanistan, we've got below average conditions here. A little bit of a mixture both in Yemen and Oman. The UAE is generally average to even slightly below average, which is rather interesting to see this region below average given how hot the spring was in this part of the world. Let's look at Europe then. You can see a distinct warmer than average. I think this is probably going to be very close to one of the warmest Junes on record, really, from Spain, Portugal, up into France, the Low Countries, Germany, even moving into Poland, into parts of Austria, Switzerland, very warm compared to average. Slovakia, Czech Republic, Hungary is firmly warmer than average. Pretty much the majority of Central and Southern Europe is above average, cooler than average across Norway, Sweden, Finland, into the Baltic states, Western Russia, into much of northern portions of Ukraine is actually below average for the month of June. Looking at Africa then for the month of June, and this is a really standout below average across parts of Libya, into sub-Saharan Central Africa, into the northern half of Sudan and Egypt, below average. And also we've had some quite cold weather recently down in South Africa, and the southern portion of the continent has been below average, which is quite interesting. Looking at Asia then, and you can see here that we've got some large chunks of below average. Look at India, no surprise here. We've had quite a wet month after the wettest May on record for India. We've followed on from that wet May and had quite a wet June. We did have quite a lull in proceedings during the middle portions of June. The Mongolia oscillation moved into the Pacific. We've seen a downward trend in rainfall here. And you can see that southwestern portions of China. Warmer than average northwest, very warm compared to average northwest. Mongolia, eastern Kazakhstan, southern Russia, warmer than average. Eastern portions of China is warmer than average. Japan and the Korea is warmer than average here as well. So that has some incredible heat across much of Japan in the last couple of weeks or so. Myanmar below average, but then we've got warmer than average Thailand into Laos, Cambodia, and northern portions of Vietnam. Central and southern portions of Vietnam is actually below average, as you can see here. Looking at North America then, and you can see here a good part of Canada is actually below average through the northern portions of both British Columbia, Alberta. Manitoba is below average, and as well as Saskatchewan, colder than average. Look at much of Ontario, Quebec, into Labrador, cooler than average, up into Nunavut territory as well, below average, which is interesting. Much of Greenland below average, but the majority of the lower 48 is warmer than average, which you can see here. East Texas, parts of the Oklahoma and Kansas average to below average, but the majority of the east of the Mississippi warmer than average, as can be seen here, and western portions of the United States. We've got the northern and southern plain states where we've got some pockets of cooler than average. Good afternoon to Jeff Clark. Good afternoon to Andy as well. UK houses trap heat and many homes do not have aircon. That is very true, Andy. They're designed to essentially keep the heat in, but not keep the heat out. Brick buildings tend to heat up, and then even when the temperatures drop off during the overnight period, the heat does not escape your home. And then obviously day after day of temperatures into the mid to high 20s or low 30s, that's an accumulative warming effect, and that's what makes hot spells in the UK much more uncomfortable because of the type of homes that we live in. Our homes are designed to keep cold out. They're not designed to keep the heat out, unfortunately. So that is North America. Let's have a quick sneak peek at South America for the month of June. We've got the majority of Brazil is warmer than average. The Amazon Basin around about average. We've got the Uruguay and Paraguay below average. Southern portions of Brazil down towards the Porto Alegre region here. Rio Grande do Sul province or state down in the far south. Northern portions of our Argentina is below average, as you can see here. You can see here kind of a bit of mixture both in Venezuela and Colombia here in terms of temperature anomaly. Look, and let's not forget our friends down in the southern hemisphere and Australia. How is the temperature anomalies looking for the month here? And the good part of northern and eastern Australia is firmly below average, with the exceptions of the far north of Queensland, if you notice here. Southern Australia and southwestern Australia is warmer than average. But that's quite a large chunk of Australia is colder than average, which is interesting. Warmer than average down across New Zealand, if you notice here. So that is that. Good afternoon to Hazel Kitching. I hope you're well. Hazel, let me just see here if there is anybody else tuning in. We've got 43 concurrent viewers at the moment here, so we've got a bigger live stream today than in recent weeks, so it's good to see folks tuning in on your Sunday afternoon. I Eat Slaters is also tuning in. That is a fantastic handle name. Yeah, my house seems to warm up through the night. Yeah, and many people can vouch for that. It has to be said. So, yeah, let's crack on then and see. Shall we look at the July outlook? Yeah, let's get to the July outlook then, instead of me waffling on any further. So, this was released last night on markvoganweather.com, another absolutely free website that you can check out. You can read this at your leisure. I will quickly skim through the kind of details, and you can check out some of the kind of, for a better word, I suppose, the technical stuff. I'm going to try and keep it as fairly straightforward as possible. Cracking image, by the way. This was from the thunderstorms over Paris back a couple of weeks ago. This is Bertrand Kulik is on Twitter. Give him a little follow if you're interested in photography. That he is based in the Paris area of France. So he kindly gave me permission to share that image and share as the featured photograph on the article. So obviously we've had this kind of setup with a rather extreme Icelandic trough versus Mediterranean ridge. That has created quite an extreme month. We've obviously had areas of low pressure keeping the north and west of the UK largely around about average, maybe just slightly above average in terms of temperatures, but then the southern half of the UK has been influenced quite strongly by that ridge of high pressure. Central and southern Europe, probably one of the warmest Junes on record. But you can see very clearly frontal systems that have obviously been associated with lows moving into the heat, generating strong, powerful thunderstorms, lots of lightning, localized flash flooding, hail, damaging winds, you name it, they have had it. And this has been kind of waves of storminess as these fronts have kind of penetrated that ridge, heat, humidity, obviously acting as a fuel to generate some very powerful supercell thunderstorms across parts of Iberia, France, into Austria, Switzerland, Germany, Poland, in the northern portions of Italy has been seeing some very big storms, but also coupled with that, in between these fronts, we've been seeing that kind of inflation of the high. That is the word I was trying to get to. So that's been the general flavour of weather through the month of June. Lots of heat. We've had 2-3 waves of 30-degree heat in the southern half of the British Isles. We're in the midst of another one across the southeast, the strongest of the lot so far. This is the temperature anomalies, as I've already showed you. This is the overall thinking for the summer, but also this matches up quite nicely with the June idea. So if you look at the synoptics for June versus my ideas, not a bad call. So I think really June overall has played out pretty well. I'm quite happy with June so far. So obviously I'm going to update the extremes that have taken place during the course of June over the next few days, so stay tuned for this. This article will get updated because of that. Information still doesn't come through. The Met Office stats, for example, that will come over the next few days, and this article will get updated as a result of that. I'll add in the June stats once they become available. So one of the strongest upper level ridges to end June is now building overhead. We are going to threaten all-time records as well as the June record. The early July records will also get threatened as well. It's got a very powerful upper high where essentially expanding the troposphere, so the depth of sinking within the atmosphere, that then generates some really super hot temperatures down at the surface as a consequence of pressure building. You've got thickness values of 594 to 600 decameters. That's essentially 6,000 meters of compressed air dropping from the upper levels of the troposphere down to the surface here. That is what maximizes, and essentially you're reaching the physical limits of potential heating down at the surface. Hence why we've seen a 46 yesterday afternoon in Spain. It's conceivable that we could approach 40 Celsius in Belgium, possibly the upper 30s in the Netherlands, mid 30s in the UK over the next couple of days, and then that heat will eventually get shifted eastwards. So this is up there with a record strong upper level high pressure for the time of the year over parts of France as well as Spain, particularly so Spain. And that's a little graphic explaining how high pressure works and how the air sinks and it heats up as it sinks through compressional warming. Temperature anomalies, generally you're kind of widespread 6 to 8, but the 12 Celsius above average for the final days of June, beginning of July. That heat is going to eventually get shifted eastwards thanks to a frontal system moving in from the west. We've had strong winds across the northern half of the UK, 50 plus mile per hour quite widely across the far north. Western Isles, the Northern Isles has been seeing some strong winds, and we've also seen wave heights in excess of 5 to 6 meters in elevation in the Atlantic waters between the Faroes and Scotland over the last 24 hours or so as well. These are June records, so we've broke the record for Spain. The old record was 45.2 set back in the 1960s. Portugal, 43.2. That's likely to have been broken as well. So we've likely achieved a new June record in 2025 for both Portugal and Spain. France's record of 46, that won't be broken, I don't think. Belgium, the record for June is 38.8. I think we will possibly get there or exceed that tomorrow. The Netherlands, 36.5. That's possible. And the UK, the record's obviously 35.6. There's a small possibility I think that might be achieved. But the problem is, we get into the month of July on Tuesday. That is likely to be the hottest day of the year, I think, anyway, for the UK. So, hottest days will come during the opening days of July, especially for mainland Europe, with all-time records threatened. So the opening days of July is seeing a cooling trend from west to east, starting over Ireland, followed by the UK as a whole over the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We'll see fresher air moving in. The heat will peak probably on Tuesday, Wednesday across inland areas of the near continent. Then that heat will get pushed eastwards, and eventually the temperatures will come down, even in France and the Low Countries, as we progress through the middle portions of the week. So 46.0, new record for Spain, as already highlighted at El Granado, just just near the Portuguese border. I don't know what river it is, but there's a river that runs between Portugal and Spain, separating the two countries. El Granado is very close, just to the east of that river, separating the two nations. Beyond the hot opening days of July, what follows that? We're likely to see an area of high pressure. Now, I think we're going to see disturbed weather moving through the middle portions of this week. Disturbances moving out of the Biscay region into the UK and Ireland. And then I think we're going to see a renewed high pressure cell develop to the west of the UK and Ireland. We may see northwesterly winds. This is the upper height forecast, by the way, off the CFSV2 for the next 7 days. So that big, powerful, high centered bank slap over the central regions of the Alps in Germany. We're going to start to see that trough that is digging over the Atlantic. That's been responsible for pumping this area of high pressure like a bicycle pump, driving that strong jet, piling a lot of air in from the Atlantic, bumps into this block of high pressure, and it builds that pressure to maximum levels for the end of June. According to the CFSV2, this is how the second week turns out. So the 5th of July through the 12th of July, you can actually see the core of high pressure to the south, also to the west. Notice a trough over Scandinavia, but they notice the orientation of both the trough to the north and the high to the kind of south and west. That would generate more of a kind of west-northwesterly airflow, probably cooling things down across the board. We are going to still hold in the warmth across the far south of the UK, but that actually signifies a cooler than average signal. This is the upcoming 7 days. So very warm compared to average Spain, France, Low Countries, into the southeast UK, Germany, central areas of Europe. But look at week 2 with the high pressure core slightly to the west of the UK and Ireland. We're actually going to go below average across, say, central and northern UK, closer to average Wales, Midlands, East Anglia, the very far south. The CFSV2 indicates slightly above average, and then France and Iberia warmer than average, as can be seen here. Into week 3, so this is obviously getting further out in time, so it has to be taken with a pinch of salt. But the 12th through the 19th of July, the CFSV2 indicates temperatures warming back up above average, albeit slightly above average for the UK and Ireland. And then into week 4, warmer than average, but again, the further out in time, the less reliable it becomes. In terms of precipitation over that whole 4-week period of July, it's actually looking below average in terms of rainfall, which is interesting. So you can see here, step by step, the position of the 500 millibar height field. We've got that negative, then replaced by higher pressure once again. But it's where the high sits is going to be important. That core of high pressure centered to the west out over the Atlantic indicates more of a fresher northwesterly airflow around the high, indicating a potential below average, possible anyway. Notice here that we've got a slight weak signal here indicating that we may have a sneaky area of low pressure that tries to develop. Again, very long way out, so it has to be, this is one model run of many. GFS Ensemble, ECMWF, Meteo France, Met Office, all these different models. This is only the CFSV2, so that has to be remembered. But I think my overall thinking, to try and cut a long story short, I know I don't do a great job of that. The overall idea is, this is the verdict for the month of July. Near average to slightly below average temperatures and precipitation for Northern Ireland and Scotland. So drier than average, but also the potential of slightly below average rainfall and temperature for the UK north. So Northern Ireland and Scotland below average. Warmer and drier than average, with further hot spells. So take a note of that. Further hot spells potential for Ireland, Wales and England during the month of July. Cooler across Scandinavia, well above normal and drier than average for southern and central Europe. So very similar to the month of June, I think. Cooler across the north, warmer across the south. Further pulses of heat lifting out of Spain and France into the southern UK and also the Netherlands and Germany. Further record challenging heat. So unfortunately, the dryness is going to worsen across particularly the southern UK and also much of Europe as we move into the heart of summer. This is obviously the second of 3 meteorological months of summer. Looking then at the 30-day period, this is a Friday the 27th of June through Sunday the 27th of July, in terms of the upper level heights over that 30-day period. Notice here that we've got a trough within the Arctic and over Greenland, over Iceland, and quite a strong mid-latitude ridge of high pressure, North America, bridged with Europe. The jet position, by the way, would be just to the north of the UK, with this mean position. That's the GFS ensemble. This is the ECMWF. Very similar in terms of having that high, firmly entrenched within the mid-latitudes, lower pressure up towards the Arctic region for July. That's obviously there's going to be fluctuations back and forth. It won't stay uniform like that throughout the month. Yeah, obviously I have to understand that. So, let me just see here. In terms of the Mongolia oscillation, so this is obviously upward motion versus descending air. So ascent versus descent within the atmosphere. You've got this is for July of the CFSV2. You've got a lot of subsidence over the Americas and the Atlantic. That is not very conducive for tropical activity. It's also likely to support that high dry scenario over Europe when you've got a large scale subsidence over the Atlantic. So you decrease tropical activity on the whole, give or take obviously, but you also have a greater chance of seeing stronger high pressure over Europe when you've got this upward motion over the Pacific and then the ocean subsidence sinking motion over the Atlantic and the Americas. So I wanted to point that out and make that fairly clear. So this is absolutely free for you to look at any point in time. Just Google marfugandweather.com and you can check this article out at your leisure. So I've discussed June. I've discussed the ideas for the month of July. Let's have a look and then at see other aspects that are of interest from a global perspective. So the Indian monsoon has done very well so far. We've now seen the progression all the way up into Delhi and the adjacent northern regions, states, provinces, whatever you want to say, of northern India. So the advance of the monsoon has reached the far north. It's about 8 days ahead of schedule. We've been seeing very plentiful rains across India, and the Indian Meteorological Department has declared the monsoon has reached the far north. So all of India is now within monsoon conditions. We're seeing slightly drier across the far south of the country, where we're seeing wetter than average across the north of the country. So let's move on then and see some of the extremes that have been taking place. We've obviously been seeing some mega flooding across parts of China. Many parts of China seeing mega rainfall. Obviously, we've got the wildfires across parts of Europe due to the drought and heat here. This is Izmir or Izmir. I don't know exactly the right pronunciation of that place, but I know it's a well-known tourist hotspot within Turkey. But mega drought and wildfires, strong winds fanning the flames in this region of coastal Turkey. So this is off Weather Monitor on Twitter. Quite often, pretty much every week, look at his Twitter handle. He, she, don't know who it is exactly, but very useful feed of information from a global perspective. So again, wildfires nasty in Turkey. We've obviously been seeing some big rains now progress into northern India and Pakistan. This is Abbottabad, I think is the right pronunciation. Flash flooding at this teaching hospital in this city in Pakistan. So yep, that is the scenes in that region of Pakistan. Wildfires in Greece. And unfortunately for Europe, this situation, Spain, Portugal, you're going to see more and more of this over the next week or so, and probably throughout the rest of the summer, unfortunately, due to the fact that I just see more and more drought worsening across the continent as opposed to any sort of relief. Whereabouts is this here? This looks quite interesting. Is this in New Zealand, in Nelson? Yeah, so Nelson in New Zealand, Tasman, and Marlborough occurred around the 27th, 28th of June, following a 24-hour period of intense rainfall. Some locations recorded over 300 millimeters of rain during that time, leading to widespread emergencies and evacuation. Check this out here. So that's the Nelson area of New Zealand. Simon says, thanks, Mark. Always find your channel very interesting. Simon in Sussex. Thank you very much, Simon. I do greatly appreciate your kind words, my friend. It is always nice to see that people are enjoying what they see here on the channel. Some very big rainfall in parts of Mexico. And this has been quite a common sight in the last week or so. In parts of Mexico, we've obviously been seeing quite a lot of powerful thunderstorms over Central America, drifting into Mexico. Below average temperatures and above average rainfall has become the story across large swathes of Mexico this summer. A far cry from a couple of summers ago where we had drought and record-breaking heat. Very different story. This region here in Guizhou province, probably right, wrong pronunciation, over 300 millimeters of rainfall in a 24-hour period, causing major flooding. China has been really bad for flooding in recent days. Good afternoon to Steffi Adcock as well. Hope you're well, Steffi. Thanks for tuning in today. Check this out. Massive tornado. Corey Gherkin, I think is hopefully the right pronunciation. This was from Gary, South Dakota, back during the course of the week. Powerful ridge-riding thunderstorms, the heat dome. We've obviously had record-breaking heat in the eastern United States. Before I forget, we will tune in and look at some of the temperatures that we have achieved in the eastern United States. It's not just Europe. Before we got the big heat building over Western Europe, we've seen major heat across the eastern half of the United States. So I'll check out that in a second here. I always manage to forget something, so hopefully I can remember to show you that just before we close off today's stream. Let's continue to look through here and see some of the images that are coming out from around the world. Some extremes. Monterey Peninsula, California. Pebble Beach, this is flooding. This was from the 28th of June, so yesterday. So last evening, I think, if I'm right in seeing this, some clip from Pebble Beach, California, of flash flooding. Wow. Yeah, I'll tell you what, you don't often see that in California in the end of June, unless you get tropical cyclone activity moving out of Mexico, moving out of the East Pacific. Sometimes it wraps into that four corners high. You generate the shower thunderstorms that get into California, Arizona, and New Mexico. New Mexico has also seen some mega rainfall in recent times. This was, by the way, in a part of Greece. I think this was last evening. So as well as the wildfires, we're seeing thunderstorms, hail, flash flooding. Quickly moving on then, so I don't forget anything. This is Ulaanbaatar, the capital of Mongolia, above all places. Good afternoon to Chris A. tuning in. Hope you're well. Thanks for tuning in, Chris. Hope you're having a good weekend and a good Sunday, my friend, so far. Let me see here what else I can show. Huge wildfire in and around the Madrid area of Spain. Again, this is the New Zealand floods around the Nelson area. Jalisco, Mexico. Guadalajara. Again, flash flooding in this part of Mexico. So, like I've said already, Mexico cooler and wetter than average for the month of June. Let's see if that continues. This was a twister that a water spout made landfall, so it became a tornado. As soon as a water spout over the ocean moves on land, it goes from water spout to a tornado. This was in Leeville in Louisiana. So interesting stuff. This is Punjab in Pakistan. Flash flooding here. So obviously eases the intensity of the heat, but also at a cost. Heavy rainfall and potential for flash flooding. This is an airport down in parts of Argentina where we've had heavy snowfall taking place. Notice how I avoided mentioning the name because I tend to butcher names, and ones that I'm not even going to attempt to even try and say that. Let's see here if there's any other interesting things. This is a Halong City in Vietnam. Again, flash flooding. We've seen it in parts of Thailand as well. Let's move on to Jim Yang, based in China. Very quickly look at some of his posts. Big heat, but also big storms. We've got the Mayu front that kind of wiggles back and forward around this part of East Asia. So this is a region here. Guizhou, 13 counties had rainfall exceeding 500 millimeters with a maximum rainfall of 1,018.6 millimeters, which exceeded the local rainfall in half a year. So I don't know what the time frame of that 1,018 millimeters is, but certainly big rains taking place, extreme intense rainfall. Unfortunately, China is quite often a victim of these big rains. 300 millimeters of rain falling in this location. I think again Guizhou in Liasan hit like 300 millimeters of rain in 24 hours. It's a big deal, of course. We've also seen record heat in Shanghai. I think a new monthly June record of 38 Celsius was achieved. Yeah, today Shanghai weather station broke its highest record for June, 38.5 Celsius. An additional 8 other stations broke or surpassed their June record. We've also been seeing some intense heat across parts of the Koreas and also in Japan. Temperatures in the hottest parts of northeastern China, upwards of 39.9, breaking a June record. An automated weather station recorded 47.6 in Mohe, northeasternmost China. Mohe, by the way, is pretty much the pole of cold in China, where you can see temperatures dropping into the minus 50s in wintertime. Imagine 47.6 in the summer. So these big, massive diurnal, or not diurnal, but annual fluctuations in heat versus cold. So that's that. Let's move on then to extreme temperatures around the world, because he also shares fantastic information from a global perspective. Maximiliano Herrera is his name, based in Costa Rica. So, this is from 3 hours ago. Portugal, 45.4 at Alvega, a new national record for the highest temperature in June. So, Spain, now Portugal, it's been confirmed, recording the hottest temperature for June on record. Not that far off all-time records, by the way, for these countries, which is interesting stuff. Mega warm nights. I noticed, I think it's Porto Alegre in Portugal, recording a minimum temperature of 31.5 this morning, by the way, after temperatures upper 30s, low 40s during the course of yesterday afternoon. And then we've returned to the low 40s this afternoon, so brutal heat. Parts of East Asia as well. Russia, minimum temperatures only 22.5. Japan, record-breaking temperatures, 400 plus records achieved here. Oceania, seeing all-time records falling as well. Let's continue to move on then and see if there's anything else that stands out. Then we will close things off for today. Have I remembered everything? I hope I have. I've mentioned the monsoon, record-breaking heat in Europe. And we've talked about the July outlook as well. Just don't want to forget anything. Again, talking about the heat in China. And obviously in the European outlook tomorrow, we are going to look at what's next. So we'll be talking about the heat, the potential, what the temperatures are over the next couple of days. How hot is it going to get? Are we going to get to that June record? Are we going to see hotter on Tuesday? But the timing of this cooler air moving in off the Atlantic, we'll look at that in much more detail over the next few days. We'll also talk about the dynamics of how this heat dome developed and the extremity of the high pressure itself as well. We'll look at that in a little bit more detail coming up over the next few days as well. So for the more technical discussion, the people that are more interested in understanding how we got to this stage, how we're talking about these record temperatures, this is hopefully the channel that will give you that information here. So that was that. Am I seeing anything else? I don't think I am. World records for hottest nights at high elevations continue since weeks in Pakistan. Elevation 1,200 meters, minimum temperature of 34 Celsius being achieved. So high elevations in Pakistan recording some remarkably hot overnight temperatures. Cold across parts of South Africa, but we are seeing winter warmth returning down here. Is there anything else that I can show? As soon as I close off this live stream, I'll be like, I forgot to show that. That's always the case. We're going to call it quits there. That is now 5 o'clock. We're approaching 1 hour. How many people have we got on the live stream at the moment? We've got 46 concurrent viewers. Before you leave today's live stream, do me a favour and hit that like button. And also, hit that subscribe button as well. It would be greatly appreciated. So, massive thank you to Katrine, Jeff Clark, Lindsay, the moderators. Thank you very much to the moderators, Lindsay, Sinksplint, and to Paul James for moderating today's stream. Is always greatly appreciated for the kindness of people taking the time out of their busy schedules to support myself and the channel. Nothing as it seems. Thank you for tuning in, Chris A. To Jeff Clark. I may have said it, I may be repeating myself. I do apologise. Thanks to Steffi for tuning in. It's good to see Steffi on, and it's good to see obviously everybody tuning in. Thanks to Paul Farwell for tuning in. To Alternative Thoughts, I've not mentioned them. I've only noticed you now. Sorry about that, Alternative Thoughts, but I hope you've enjoyed today's stream. Thanks for taking part in the chat. To Simon Galliandro, is that how you pronounce it? I kind of slightly avoided saying it initially because I would probably make a muck of it. So Simon Galliandro, I think, is the right pronunciation. Thank you very much for tuning in and also for your kind words. Thanks to Hazel for tuning in as well. To Paul Miller, and like I've said, all the moderators, the 3 moderators today as well. Let's round things up. I hope you've enjoyed the content today. I hope you've enjoyed a little bit of chat. Enjoy your Sunday roast if you're having one. If you're not, whatever you're having, enjoy your dinner this evening. And be sure to check out the European Outlook. We've got a full week of content coming up here on this channel. And also hit the notification bell as well so you don't miss future uploads. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. And I'll see you tomorrow with the European Outlook. Should be published around 5 p.m. as usual. Bye-bye.